Good evening, everyone. This is Jeff Simons, Superintendent of Schools for the East Greenbush Central School District, and I want to begin by asking the members of our panel who will be joining us for the discussion of the school reopening plan to enable your video and to ensure that as we begin the presentation and question and answer session that you are aware of when your microphone is muted and when it needs to be enabled. On behalf of the East Greenbush Central School District, I want to welcome everybody to our second virtual community forum in regard to the school reopening plan. Those of you who have joined us via the live stream will have an opportunity this evening to hear about the progress that's being made regarding the school reopening planning. And there will be an opportunity to ask some questions of you through a program called Thought Exchange and to, with the help of our distinguished panel, answer any questions or concerns that we can answer at this time. As you know, if you have participated in the last presentation or have read our preliminary reopening plan, this is a very fluid process. All districts within New York State are working through the various issues that are involved. And we hope that through this discussion this evening that you'll leave the meeting with a better understanding of the plans, some of the challenges and variables that we're still trying to work through, as well as some of the considerations that are involved in the options that we can provide to the community and those options that we cannot provide. So without further ado, I'd like to first introduce our panel, and then I will move to the formal presentation. At various times in the presentation, I may call on Mr. McHugh or others to assist me with the presentation, and then they will play a very important role in addressing your questions that will be posted through the Thought Exchange. First and foremost, I want to introduce our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, James McHugh. As you know, Jim McHugh is a longtime teacher and administrator in the district, and he is in charge of all instructional and curricular programs. Additionally, I want to introduce our Director of Pupil Personnel Services, Molly McGrath. She oversees the nurses, as well as our special education and related services programs. Jack Alvey is an elementary principal at the Donald P. Sutherland Elementary School. He is a veteran of the district and has been instrumental in helping us work together to put together our plans. Mr. Marty Mahar is a principal at Belltop Elementary School, and Mr. Mahar has joined us to give us some of his thoughts and considerations regarding the reopening. Dan Garib is the principal at Green Meadow Elementary School. We thank Mr. Garib for joining us this evening. And Mrs. Jill Barker is the principal at the Howard L. Goff Middle School. Mr. Harkin, Mike Harkin, is our Columbia High School principal. I believe that Mr. Harkin is on the meeting. He may be preparing some information for the presentation. I'm going to ask Mr. Harkin if he is able to enable his video. That would be great. And we're joined in critical support from Mark Adam, who is our public information specialist. He is not only helping with the technical assistance to ensure that you have access to the live stream, but he will be a key director in the engagement of the community through Thought Exchange a little later on. And Peter Goodwin is providing critical technical support. He is our Director of Technology and has helped us to organize everything and set it up so that we can have this conversation. At this time, I'm going to begin the formal presentation. I'm hoping to be able to enable and share my screen with all of you. And we will begin the formal update to the community. I would ask my panel to give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Very good. So far, it's working very well. Okay, we are providing an update this evening to our school community regarding the reopening planning. There are a number of opportunities this week to engage in not only thinking about the reopening, but we thought it would be a nice idea to start tonight's conversation with a highlight of the week. Last year, Mr. Leonard and I, our athletic director, discussed how could we add some celebration to our high school campus. And with Mr. Leonard's initiative, he has been able to procure for our district some signs that went in today to celebrate our New York State Championship athletic teams, as well as our individual state champions on our Columbia High School campus. So while this has nothing to do and is not directly related to the school reopening, we thought we would give you an opportunity to know that we are engaging in ways that we can continue to maintain and celebrate the traditions and the successes of our district. So if you drive by Columbia and you see something new, please recognize that that is a celebration of our traditions and our history. We all look forward to school reopening, and we don't have any information at this time regarding what might happen with athletics, but we are hopeful that we can continue those traditions as well as our reopening for academic success. When I spoke to the community at our last meeting last week, we emphasized that we would and that we will ensure that whatever plans we offer to the community involve considerations regarding safety of our students and our staff, and we will follow the guidelines of the New York State Department of Health and the New York State Department of Education. We shared with the community that we were reviewing whether or not an option to increase the number of in-person learning days for kindergarten through 5th grade was feasible in our district. And in looking at those options, the primary consideration is safety. We've also completed a review of whether or not we have sufficient space in terms of our classroom, given our increased enrollment. You may recall that last fall, because of increased enrollment, the district had to implement changes to its attendance zones because the area of North Greenbush was growing and Belltop School was becoming overcrowded. That is one issue of many associated with a district that is growing in enrollment. And it is an issue that affects our availability of classroom space at the kindergarten through 5th grade level. Additionally, we said we would look at staffing. Do we have sufficient qualified staffing to provide the educational program, and importantly, to remain in compliance with the New York State Education Department requirements? Space and staffing go hand in hand. We have to have both sufficient space to be able to ensure that our student groupings and our classes maintain social distance, which is desks that are 6 feet apart as they are wearing masks. Additionally, we need the staffing to be able to provide the instructional program and the supervision that is required to implement those programs. And we continue to emphasize the importance of equity. We want to make sure that within the health and safety guidelines, we are providing quality education for all of our students in all of our buildings and at every level, kindergarten through 12th grade, and for students that come from a range of backgrounds. One of the points of pride of our district is we serve our students very well. Those students who require college AP courses to be successful, those students who want to take options for electives, and those students who need extra support to be successful at meeting the learning standards. So as we considered the options over the course of the last couple of weeks, safety, space, staffing, and equity were our prime considerations. We looked at a model that would require us to move all of our grade 5 students to Hudson Valley Community College. I shared with you last week that we were looking at the potential to use Hudson Valley as well as the New York State Office of Children, Family and Services training site here in East Greenbush. Since that time, New York State OCFS has informed us that they plan to increase the training activities that they're doing at the site, and so the space would not be available. So we are limited to Hudson Valley. I will say that Hudson Valley has been more than generous in being a partner to our district. They virtually gave us an entire building, the Brown Building. At Hudson Valley, we took tours with our administrators, our district architect, our facilities director to review the state and to begin the process of determining whether or not we could utilize this facility to accommodate the entire enrollment of grade 5 students across all of our district buildings and the staff, including special education, related services, special area programs, and classroom teachers and support staff. We looked at every building in the district and how the space might be utilized differently. Our principals spent time looking at how the gyms could be set up to be used as classrooms, our library spaces to be used as classrooms, our computer labs, our art rooms, and our music rooms in every building. It's important to keep in mind that we have smaller buildings and we have larger buildings depending on when those buildings were built, the particular attendance zone in which those buildings are located, as well as the history of the district. For example, Janae Elementary School is a much larger school serving our elementary population because it was once a high school and it was once a consolidated 5th and 6th grade building. Compared to DPS or Belltop, much smaller buildings and not able to accommodate as many students, even when we are looking at a reduced enrollment because many of our students will be assigned to full remote instruction. We looked at the number of children whose parents have at this point requested full remote instruction. What would the impact of those children being assigned to full remote be on the class sizes, on the groupings, and whether or not we would be able to have more space by factoring out, so to speak, the children on the class list for in-person learning, because those children would be moved to a class list for full remote learning. And we looked at assigning staff who would otherwise be providing services such as academic intervention services, which includes reading and math, as well as utilizing teaching assistants in each of our buildings to be able to make sure that we were able to provide for more kids and make sure that we were able to deliver the program in coordination with our classroom teachers. The result of that analysis, and this is a summary, is we took a look at each building and we still come up short on classrooms in some cases and in staff in each building in all cases. For example, at Belltop School, even with moving the 5th grade out to Hudson Valley, we are 6 classrooms short and approximately 6 staff short. We have taken the extra step to project the sections of classrooms at K through 5 differently than what was initially projected in the budget. For example, reducing the overall number of kids in each section because we are taking out the remote students. Even while doing that and reassigning the staff, in the case of Belltop, we come up 6 staff members short and 6 classrooms short. At DPS, following the same process, we have a sufficient number of classrooms. Again, that's using the library, using the computer lab, using the art rooms, using in some cases the gymnasiums. We still come up approximately 3 staff members short. At Janae, we have sufficient space. Again, it's a larger building. However, we are 6 staff members short. Green Meadow, we have sufficient staff. We are 5 staff members short. Red Mill, sufficient classrooms, 1.5 staff members short. And we did a space analysis of Hudson Valley. Hudson Valley's building accommodates approximately 22 full-size classrooms. We believe we would need between 2 or 4 additional classrooms to utilize that building as a school for our 5th graders, but we come up short in the number of staff because we are dividing the groups to maintain social distancing. We come up 12 short staff members. So all in total, looking at the models that were being implemented in other districts to provide K through 5 staffing, reviewing the emails that we received suggesting ways that we could look at our approach differently, we come up 10 classrooms short, 33.5 staff members short. Additionally, we went an extra step. We looked at what we might be able to do to increase the number of teaching assistants that were provided at the elementary school level. We currently have approximately 17 teaching assistants at the middle school and the high school who service our special education classes. They are not teaching assistants that are identified as an individual IEP. For example, we have a number of students that have one-to-one teaching assistants that support individual children. And even when we subtract the transfer of those teaching assistants to the elementary level, we still come up 16 and a half teaching assistants short of what we need to increase the enrollment kindergarten through fifth grade in all of our elementary schools to 5 days a week in-person learning. The 17 part-time teaching assistants, the 17 positions that I mentioned, are part-time. Okay? They do not work a full schedule, and they currently do not receive health insurance benefits because they are not considered full-time employees. By reassigning those teaching assistants, in order to make the model work, we need to take those 17 part-time teaching assistants and increase those teaching assistants to full-time, which increases their salaries and their benefits in accordance with contracts. We do have 5 full-time teaching assistants who could be reassigned, totaling a total of 22 teaching assistants. It's important to note, however, that we serve all kids, and that would reduce the support for our students with the most significant learning needs at the middle school and the high school level. But we looked at doing it. Additionally, we are a very fiduciary responsible district. We are cost sensitive. The cost of increasing the hours and the benefits of the 17 positions of the teaching assistants that are currently part-time is $655,000. Hiring a remaining 16 and a half teaching assistants to cover those remaining classes would cost an additional $835,000. So all in total, to hire and or increase teaching assistant hours would cost our district almost $1.5 million. And we have a looming state aid cut of between 10 to 20% of our foundation aid. So from a space, staffing, and cost analysis, increasing the K-5 in East Greenbush is cost prohibitive, doesn't give us sufficient space to be able to implement in-person learning for all of our kids K through 5, and does not give us sufficient staffing within the resources that we have available within our district. I want to step back from the slides for just a minute to talk about the district's financial considerations. Our district is considered a district that is fiscally stable by the New York State Comptroller. And part of that achievement is that we are very sensitive to efficiencies that we can achieve and have been efficient leading up to where we are right now within our district. You may recall periods of time in which the state aid was reduced to our district to the point that staffing needed to be looked at. For example, many years ago, when the budget was difficult, many of the teaching assistants that were full-time were reduced to part-time. That was done to make an adjustment to the overall impact of the budget, to preserve programs where we could, and to make sure that we had resources to ensure that we could meet the needs of the students in the future. Additionally, we do not have a lot of excess space. We are a growing district. Right? We utilize our space as effectively and as efficiently as we can. And as part of our budget process, we not only project out every year as part of the budget the number of teaching sections that we need, we align the resources within the district's general fund to make sure that we can provide those classes to our students. This particular situation with the pandemic and being able to implement some of these changes doesn't come with any extra money. We don't have any extra money to be able to hire this level of staff to be able to implement a plan. Although we would be open to continuing to evaluate our current plans as we move forward. Additionally, we looked at the impact of adding an additional site for our fifth graders at Hudson Valley and what we would may be able to do to meet the transportation guidelines. Districts are striving to make sure that we can practice social distancing on the bus. Additionally, we need a minimum of 10 minutes, and that's a minimum of 10 minutes between the time we drop students off, for example, at Columbia High School, and we clean the seats properly and in accordance with CDC and Department of Health guidelines, keeping in mind the students need to exit the buses differently, 6 feet apart. They need to have their temperature checked before they go into the building. So that minimum of 10 minutes is optimistic. You can imagine what is involved in that. For example, just by starting at Columbia High School, for those of you who are familiar with how the buses typically would pull in versus what we need to do to make sure that the staging occurs appropriately so the kids are safe, social distancing is being practiced, temperature checks are happening before the kids enter the building. Additionally, our calculation of what would be required to make sure that the students are sitting appropriately and safely on the bus with their masks on is a 22 student capacity for what would normally be a 66 passenger bus. In order to meet both of those requirements, the amount of time it would take to drop the kids off safely, clean the seats, and ensure that there are 22 students on a 66 passenger bus, we need 5 tiers of busing because we're adding Hudson Valley. How would that affect transportation tiers, and how would it affect building times? Tier 1 would be Columbia High School as it is right now. Goff Middle School would be Tier 2 as it is right now. We would need to split in order to meet the number of children that can be on a bus. The K2 would have 1 bus run. The 3-4 would have a second bus run. And we would be able to implement this in a way that the K2 kids would start at the typical time, which is around 9 o'clock, with one exception, Janae, currently. But the 3-4 busing, remember, we're going into the Red Mill zone with our buses. We're going into the Belltop zone. We're going into the Janae zone, the DPS zone, and the Green Meadow zone. We're picking up kindergarten through 2nd grade kids. We're bringing them to school. We're making sure that they get off the bus safely. We're doing temperature checks with those children. We're cleaning the seats, and then we have to go back and get the 3-4 kids. We can't put all the K4 kids on a bus at the same time and practice the social distancing, contrary to our current hybrid proposal, which doesn't have all of the K4 kids on a bus at any one time. Additionally, a separate tier, a Tier 5, would be necessary for Hudson Valley, and that site could not begin until approximately 10 to 10:15 and would dismiss after 4:30. In both the case of our 3-4 students and in the case of our grade 5 students, these timeframes would not only be difficult for our transportation department, they would be difficult for parents, and they exceed the contractual times within our contract regarding how late our teachers are expected to currently work. It wouldn't work out for parents, it wouldn't work out for staff, and it wouldn't work out for our busing ideally. Then we looked at educational and equity considerations. The model that we would employ to accommodate in-person learning, again, would involve the use of classroom teachers, the use of teaching assistants, the use of AIS reading teachers, and teaching assistants. Students would not be instructed by their classroom teacher all day. Students would be grouped so that the teacher, the teaching assistant, the other specialized teachers would be working differently at different times with different groups so that those groups could be maintained in terms of the social distancing and the cohorts. However, the impact of that would be that students would not be working with their classroom teacher all day. Additionally, teaching assistants and AIS teachers would be assigned to teach the classes for part of the day. Academic intervention services would have to be provided to only those students that are mandated. Typically, that is those students that do not meet standards on the 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade tests. Early intervention, we're having our reading teachers and our academic intervention specialists working with our kindergarten through 2nd grade kids has been an effective model to ensure that the students can meet the standards by the time they enter 3rd grade. It is more difficult after the 3rd and 4th grade year to ensure that we can provide that kind of success. So early intervention would be impacted. Additionally, the scheduling of art, music, physical education could not be provided on its normal weekly basis. In some cases, in order to do that, we would have to add to the expense and double the number of art, music, and PE teachers assigned to a particular building. And physical education would have to be modified because the gym would not be in utilization. The movement of the 5th graders onto a separate site has presented speculation of that. The discussion of that has presented some concerns that I've received from parents of both 4th graders and 5th graders, because we talked about that at our last community engagement. And we would be concerned about our 5th graders spending their last year at the elementary school level outside of their home school. Although we were willing to consider it if the space worked and the staffing worked for us within the resources that we have. And overall, in considering these factors and how the model would have to be delivered at the K through 5 level, we've come to the conclusion that it is a diminished academic model. It would not provide the same level of education that the current hybrid proposal will for our students. So last but certainly not least, the most important factor in considering all of our options, particularly at the elementary level, is, as we look at this new option, is safety. As we move into getting closer to September, all districts are beginning to make sure that they have evaluated and reevaluated and assessed their plans. There is a great benefit to starting slow and safe, a slow and safe September, continually evaluating as we progress, bringing our kids back to school, bringing our staff back to school, and helping our families, our staff members, and our children feel comfortable and feel safe. Not only to reacclimate to academic learning, but to reacclimate to the social experiences of being with other kids and being with their teachers and support staff. Moving slowly and cautiously enables the district to make sure that our new procedures, which require training, evaluation, and adjustment, are working well for our students, for our staff, and are satisfying the many fears that are out there on the part of our families. Thirdly, this model that we currently have within the preliminary plan, offering both a hybrid and a full remote option to our families, prepares our students and staff for 2 possibilities. One, in the event that things are going well, we find that we can open up a little bit as we progress. We can look at ways to increase in-person instruction over time. Additionally, by engaging in the hybrid model, we would be able to shift all of our staff, all of our kids, and all of our families to full remote learning in the event that the COVID-19 cases increase to the level within our region where the governor would make a decision that we need to shift everybody to full remote. In conclusion, for all of these reasons, insufficient space, insufficient staff, the affordability, and the increased uncertainty within the community. What I mean by that is I have heard from not only parents who are concerned that their children receive 5 days of in-person learning. I have also heard from many parents who have a level of confidence in the hybrid plan that has been proposed, and who have said, in the event that we increase in-person learning to 5 days a week, they would consider moving their children to a full remote option. Additionally, I have heard from families who are quite comfortable, again, coming into the schools under a hybrid with the limits of in-person learning 2 days a week, as well as those families who want the full remote option, even though we are easing into this with a hybrid model. So we looked at everything. And I can say with a great level of confidence that both my administrators that are here on the meeting and the administrators that have not joined us this evening, we've worked feverishly over the course of the last 2 weeks to look at everything which way to Sunday. And we've come up short, okay, on space and on staff and on affordability. But we haven't come up short on learning, and we haven't come up on short on engagement, because we believe the quality of what we're doing within the hybrid proposal will meet our students' needs well, and the quality of what we're doing within the full remote option will meet our children's needs well. And the busing and the school start times simply will not work for our community, with our parents' considerations as well as our staff considerations. As we look at each one of these factors that was involved in looking at the possibility of bringing our kids back in person at the kindergarten through 5th grade level every day of the week, it's important to remember that all of these factors are interrelated to one another. Space affects staffing, staffing affects the program, staffing affects cost, and all of these things go together. So it's not one factor that went into making the decisions that we're making. It was all of these factors and how they interrelate as we try to meet the educational needs of our students equitably across the district and safely as we reopen our schools. So I will be recommending to the Board of Education implementing the proposed hybrid plan. I'm letting you know that now so that we can engage in all the preparations that would be necessary, both as a school district and for you as a family. We will monitor and evaluate within the first month. We will hope that things will go very, very well, and I have every confidence that they will, and we will respond to issues as they come up. Additionally, I'll commit to continuing to communicate with the community what's happening within our schools as we reopen gradually, and we will continue to work with our child care providers and our families to ensure that not only they have child care, but that they have access to supervised and helpful remote learning support when those children are attending child care. In order to put all of this together, we are going to send out to our families of students at all levels a confirmation of whether or not children want to participate, families want their children to participate in the full remote. That will include a description of the full remote option, which will also be posted on our website tomorrow. That description will provide as much information as we have available at this time to help you to make an informed choice. We will ask you to make a commitment and fill out a form and send it back, including those families who have already contacted principals. And that's critically important because some families were unsure as to what option they wanted to choose. It is critically important that we receive those commitment forms by August 21st. Our principals are working on the AB class assignment days for in-person instruction, and they cannot finish that process until such time as they know for sure what children within their schools will be on full remote learning and what children in their schools will be attending on the hybrid schedule. At this time, I'm going to ask Mr. McHugh to provide us with a refresher regarding the hybrid schedule and the plan which has been proposed. Mr. McHugh, are you still out there?
I am. So the initial hybrid plan that was presented at the last community session, it for logistical purposes, it decreases the student enrollment by approximately 50% on any given day. So just some terminology just to clear up as we go along, and I'll just give you an example. If a student was in Group A, that student would receive in-person instruction on Monday, and on Tuesday, they would be remote. They would have remote learning, and I'll talk about and define what remote learning looks like. On Wednesday, all of our students, K through 12, will receive live virtual instruction, and that was a very calculated decision, because what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to adapt and evolve at any time for what may come next. So we learned a lot from the spring. We learned that live or that remote learning, there were some bumps in the road. So we are not implementing any kind of pass-fail situation. We're implementing our grading policies that are available on the Board of Education website. There's an increased accountability for our students. And I'll talk a little bit more about that live virtual, but the benefit of that live virtual instruction K-12 is that it gives us a chance to get our feet wet a little bit. So we realize that it's going to look very different for students depending upon what grade they're in. But if it does not go well, those students have that opportunity to connect with their teacher over the next 2 school days for in-person. So, you know, was it a connectivity issue? Was it that they needed some more adult support that they didn't have during that time? Was it some other issue that they just didn't know how to log on? So we could remediate those situations, which is a lot easier to do in person than it is trying to do through a Google Classroom. So it gives us that experience while we still have those students. So again, then the A student would have in-person instruction on Thursday and be remote on Friday. So what I want to emphasize is that the fundamentals of teaching are the same. So it's still standards-driven instruction, K-12. There's still the same course content. There's still the same expected rigor, and it's really the same thing. We have to really design purposeful instruction. However, regardless of whether or not you're a seasoned veteran teacher with 20 years experience or it's your first year of teaching, it's going to be just like everybody's first year of teaching. So that lesson design and the approach to teaching will be new for everyone. The goal is to really design and implement a fluid, cohesive, logical instructional plan Monday through Friday, maximizing that in-person instructional time. You know, rethinking your approach to teaching and learning. And during that in-person instruction time, teachers should be focusing on knowledge and comprehension with opportunities to apply what has been taught. You know, the remembering, the recognizing, the recalling, the interpreting, the summarizing, all with direct teacher model and guidance. So, you know, we go back to our teacher prep programs, and, you know, there's a lot of the I do. So I model, then we do together with support, and then you go and apply that knowledge, and it's the you do. So when we're thinking about this to try to get our head around that, when that in-person instruction is going on, that's the time for I do and we do. When the students are remote, that's the time where they need to apply that skills. That's that we do portion. What we want is really to make sure that that remote day is not homework. There could be homework involved, but it doesn't just reflect all of homework. It's actually targeted instructional tasks, project-based learning types of activities. But in order for teachers to make that meaningful and cohesive, that takes time to rethink your instructional approach in those chunks. A couple of other things, while that classroom teacher is teaching, so, you know, the students may go in-person instruction on 2 days, but our teachers are instructing all 5 days. So it's really important to understand that, you know, there is a benefit that there's a smaller student to teacher ratio for those in-person days, but our teachers cannot be providing in-person instruction and also provide direct instruction to students while they're home working remote. So it's really that targeted lesson design. In regards to our East Greenbush K-12 instructional overview, 2 days a week of in-person interactive instruction, synchronous, meaning that, you know, it is happening in real time, and then 2 days a week for independent learning, which is that asynchronous learning, which means that it happens on the student schedule. There's more flexibility, it's self-paced. 1 day a week of remote direct interactive, and we're working through that. We have defined what that Wednesday looks like for our 6 through 12 population. Our teachers and our employees will follow their normal contractual schedule, but our students will operate on a 1-hour delay schedule. And those schedules are available both on the Goff Middle School website and the Columbia High School website. But what that virtual Wednesday would look like, there's no guide room at Columbia High School, and there wouldn't be a home base at Goff Middle School. The students will log in, they'll follow their schedule. Teachers will follow their instructional schedule. Students will follow their academic schedule. So students will log in for their periods. First period will start at 8:20 a.m. to 8:58 a.m. So instead of the normal 45-minute period, on remote days, we go to that modified schedule where it's 38 minutes, but it's simple. The students log in during that time, and that's how attendance is taken. For K-5, just to get our heads around that, totally unreasonable to think that our youngest learners are going to log on at 9 a.m. and stay logged on and engaged until 3:45 p.m. We're working through what that looks like. We want to make sure that it's developmentally appropriate. We also understand that for our youngest learners, they could be in situations where parents are working, parents are unable to really log on and help support that student during the day. So we want to make sure that what we build into that plan is that we have a plan that accommodates all of our families. For instance, if mom and dad are at work, unable to sit with the child during that live virtual Wednesday, that there is access to those lessons and that instruction at a time that would work for our family. So there may be some recordings. So if mom and dad get home at 5 o'clock and by the time they eat and do everything else that they need to do and they're not able to sit down until 6:30, that they still have that opportunity to engage in that content on Wednesdays. That plan also would allow us in any situation at any time, if we were required to go into full remote, we would follow that Wednesday schedule Monday through Friday. So we have a group of 18 elementary classroom teachers working tomorrow to really develop that plan for our live virtual Wednesdays. We want to make sure that there's consistency district-wide so that a first grader at Donald P. Sutherland is getting the same academic experience as a first grader in Belltop or Red Mill or Green Meadow or Genet. So we want that consistency district-wide. We want to make sure that it is age appropriate for the grade level. So what's done in kindergarten is not going to be the same expectation that we have for a fifth grader. So you see that increase in rigor and increase in expectations as the children get older. For the full remote option, so when we talk about remote, there's remote when the student's not receiving in-person instruction. There's remote instruction for families that choose that full remote option. And then there would be that required remote that we had in the spring. So, but this is the remote option for parents. Students and parents have requested a full remote option, may be assigned to teachers certified for all grade levels. So that instruction will be taught remotely. We're working through those details a little bit. It's pretty easy at the K-5 level. It's really dependent upon how many students have chosen that full remote option at any grade level. That would drive the number of sections needed. That would be the same for K through 6, actually. Once we get through 7 through 12, a real challenge is that those students could be in a variety of different classes. So we have a program of studies. We want to make sure that we can honor that program of studies and that our older learners still have the same opportunities as their peers have had in the past. There are some challenges associated with that. We have increased our number of courses that have college credit attached to it. Colleges drive that syllabus and the expectation, but those courses are attached to the teacher. The teachers have been approved by the college or university to teach those classes. So there are a lot of things that are possible that we're working through. We have a distance learning program where students can take a class that may be offered at a different high school. We've had that for years. We also host classes in our distance learning room where students from other districts can take a class taught by our teachers. So there may be situations for our remote learners for some of those classes that the teacher could be remote offering the class, so the students would report to a class in situations, but the other students that chose remote would also be able to engage in that class. So we're working through quite a few different scenarios under the full remote option. You're still muted, Mr. Simons. You're muted, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. McHugh. The one thing that I would emphasize on this particular slide is, as Mr. McHugh has said, well, this is an evolving situation predicated on the number of students that want full remote instruction. We will be teaching the same curriculum, the East Greenbush Central School District curriculum. The district has done extensive work over the last few years on curriculum mapping. Those curriculum maps, particularly at the elementary school level, will be tools that will be utilized by our teachers, and there will be information for parents regarding what the expectations are for learning. Additionally, we've identified the majority of the technology tools that will be utilized, with the basic platform being Google Classroom, but other tools that are available to our teachers will be utilized. Additionally, we are at the time looking at our students who have IEPs, who require special education services or related services such as occupational therapy, speech, physical therapy. Those services would be coordinated in accordance with a child's IEP and through the work of the case manager who is assigned to the special education child. There will be a more complete plan with a full remote option posted on our website tomorrow. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be sending information out to all of our parents on the full remote learning plan. We would want the commitment form back by the 21st. We are asking families to understand that it is not an easy transition to move a student who's been assigned to full remote into an in-person instruction through the hybrid. So we're asking families to understand that if they choose full remote learning, it would be a 10-week commitment, and then we would reevaluate bringing that child back into our hybrid plan. All of the work to determine the number of children on full remote assignments needs to be finalized so that we can send our AB day assignments out and complete all of the scheduling for all of the kids, as well, those kids that are on full remote, as well as those kids who would be scheduled in to the hybrid plan. I understand and have mentioned before the concerns of our families who are not able to have their children come at the kindergarten through 5th grade level to school every day. I continue to work with Greenbush Child Care and the East Greenbush YMCA on accessibility and affordability, as well as academic support. We estimate that in the case of an individual child per day cost, it will range between $45 and $50 a day. I wish we had a grant to be able to offset that within the district. We don't. I would encourage families to talk to representatives of Greenbush Child Care and the YMCA regarding their needs. Additionally, GCC has sent out to our families information, but the district will be sending out that information again on behalf of both GCC and the YMCA. We anticipate that all of that information will become available next week. At this time, dependent upon the number of children and the number of sites for childcare, we're moving forward with the approval of the St. Mary's site, and we are continuing to plan for before and after school care in all of our buildings on in-person attendance days. And we are looking at our teaching assistant staff to be able to assign some of our teaching assistants to a period of time in the morning and a period of time in the afternoon of up to 2 hours. And again, we could change this depending on the number of kids that have been assigned to the childcare sites. 2 hours of academic support in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. We anticipate that that would be approximately a 10 to 12 time period in the morning and approximately a 1 to 3 in the afternoon, with some variance because we do have a need for our teaching assistants for the morning procedures, temperature checks, and coming into the building, and in the afternoon. And while I don't know the numbers yet, we've had a number of high school students come forward with interest in the Red Cross Child Care Training course, which we will be financially supporting. So while we are not able to provide monies directly to reduce the cost of the impact of child care requirements on our families, we wish we could. We're providing in-kind services and financial support to make those child care experiences not only be safe and healthy and child care, but also to provide the academic support. I want to switch to health and safety. Some questions have come up since last week. When the governor announced that the schools had permission to reopen, in response to a question, he indicated that some schools were considering using their cafeterias, and that's like indoor dining. I can imagine that that left an impression on some of our parents. In fact, I heard from some of our parents about it, and wondering what the use of the cafeteria would look like and how it would be safe. I would say first and foremost, keep in mind that this is the high school cafeteria at Columbia High School. We will not have as many children coming into the school that day. We will have about half. We will be looking at options outside the cafeteria when the weather permits. However, you can see how the cafeteria would be set up with individual tables, with one person sitting at a table, socially distanced from longer tables that are more than 6 feet long, providing for 2 students to be able to sit more than 6 feet apart, socially distanced. So I want to thank Mr. Harkin for providing that so that we could clarify that. And Mrs. Barker has provided the setup for what the Goff cafeteria would look like, with individual desks and individual chairs for students to sit at. In between the utilization of the tables and the desks within the cafeteria, those tables would be cleaned appropriately within the guidance provided by the New York State Department of Health. Additionally, I received some health and safety related questions regarding what would happen and how children would be permitted to return to school in the event that they did have a confirmed case of COVID-19. This particular information on this slide is from the New York State Education Department frequently asked questions document. In order for a student or a staff member who has had symptoms of COVID-19 to return to school, the school is required to establish the policy with the local health department to determine when the individuals, particularly students, who have screened for COVID-19 symptoms can return to in-person learning. The protocol would involve documentation of the healthcare provider and a note clearing the individual to return to school, including a negative test and symptom resolution. All the symptoms have been resolved. Additionally, a release would be provided from the Department of Health. We spoke to the County Department of Health director this week, yesterday in fact, and they will be providing a letter in every case clearing the student to return to school. So the student would be tested. They're tested positive. They cannot be cleared until they test negative and all symptoms are resolved. That process would occur between the Department of Health, the medical primary care provider, and in communication with our nurses and our COVID-19 coordinator. We have also received some questions regarding how physical education, instrumental music, and chorus would be provided. I'm going to ask Mr. Harkin, hope Mr. Harkin is here, to talk a little bit about that. There are different considerations at the high school than there would be at the elementary school level. Mr. Harkin, are you out there?
Yes,
Mr. Hart, there is.
the internet. I'm having an internet issue. I can't get my video to work, but I should be up. I can speak to that a little bit. For education classes, we plan to be like,
I'm going to ask everybody to mute their microphone.
return. The weather will be inside.
So Mr. Harkin is having trouble with his microphone. What I'm going to do is try to see what I can do to get him back. In general, physical education, when weather permits, would be provided outside. In the event that the weather is not conducive, physical education activities would be modified to be able to be delivered with kids appropriately socially distanced and/or classroom-based instruction. Instrumental music would be provided in smaller groups with students 12 feet or more apart, and that would include the chorus. I've also received questions regarding masks. As I indicated at the last community forum, each level, elementary, middle school, and high school, will determine the duration and the procedures that will occur for mask breaks. However, unless you are medically authorized because of a medical condition not to wear a mask, everyone, students and staff, will be wearing masks. When they come off when they're on the bus, when they come off the bus, when they enter the school, they will only be permitted to take the masks off for a break during instruction or when they are eating and/or drinking. The duration of the break and the procedures will be decided in a developmentally appropriate manner at the elementary school level, the middle school, and the high school. Regardless of classroom teacher and regardless of students, the same rule will apply in every classroom. There have also been some conversations, both statewide and from some of the emails I've received from parents, regarding the procedures that may be involved in a quarantine or in contact tracing. Quarantine has come up in the context of the number of states that have travel advisories. In the event that a student travels to one of those states, they are expected to quarantine. In the event that a staff member travels one of those states, they're expected to quarantine. Quarantine also applies in the event that someone goes and gets a COVID test. Until such time as those test results come back negative, the child is expected to remain quarantined. And in cases where a child or a staff member is awaiting a COVID-19 test and that test turns out to be positive, under most situations, the members of the family residing in the same household would be quarantined as well. Contact tracing will involve the County Department of Health working with our staff to implement the contact tracing. Where were students? What rooms were they in? Who were they in contact with? What information can the school provide regarding the location of the students? Contact tracing will look at the onset of symptoms 48 hours back. In other words, if a student or a staff member has symptoms and tests positive for COVID, contact tracing will look at who did that child or who did that staff member come in contact from the time the symptoms came and were reported to the time to 48 hours prior. All of the protocols and contracting information is being developed by the Department of Health in coordination with the district, and as required by Governor Cuomo, we will be posting that information in great detail tomorrow afternoon so that parents who have continued questions or need information about the contact tracing and the protocols related to the potential for a sick or student or staff member, that information will all be provided tomorrow. My next steps include posting the additional information that I mentioned, the full remote learning plan, the contact tracing plan, and the testing plans by tomorrow afternoon. Additionally, we want to confirm the full remote students and develop the schedules for all of our students so that we can finalize the class assignments as well as the busing routes. We will provide another update to the community on the 18th and on the board meeting of the 19th. I will give my final recommendation at the expanded public, and there'll be an expanded public forum at the board meeting of August 19th. And we are in the process of preparing all of our buildings to welcome students and staff safely back to school. At this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I know we went a little longer than the last time, but there was important information around, across a number of different areas that we wanted to provide you. And I'm going to try to make Mr. Adam give Mr. Adam control of the meeting, which I'm having a little trouble doing. Bear with me.
He should already be the co-host, Jeff.
Okay, Mr. Adam, you have control?
Here, and I will be sharing my screen. All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Simons. As you said, we're going to be using a crowdsourcing platform called Thought Exchange to gather your input on our reopening plans. Does everyone see the Thought Exchange screen with the purple bar? Does everyone see that screen? Okay, great. All right, so for everyone watching, just go to tejoin.com and then you can type in that 9-digit code to join our Thought Exchange. I'm going to leave this screen up just for a minute so everyone can join the Thought Exchange. And the Thought Exchange will have 3 steps. Number 1, you can share, where you get to share your thoughts independently and anonymously if you have questions or concerns related to this question. And then the star step, where you'll rate other people's thoughts and questions, and then discover, where we'll all get to see what's most important to the group. So once you're in the Thought Exchange, please share 1 to 2 thoughts, and then you can move on and begin rating other people's thoughts. And I'm going to set this timer. We're just going to do 2 minutes because we want to make sure we get all these questions in. And the question there is, as we prepare for school reopening, employing both a hybrid model and the full remote option, in what ways can we support the success of your child in school? All right, just a little time left. So if you haven't begun rating other people's thoughts or questions, please begin to do that. And then we'll start going through them, the ones that are most popular, and tossing that back to our panel. Okay. So one of the top questions here, what happens when a student or teacher tests positive for COVID? Mr. Simons, to you.
Sorry, it took a little while for me to enable my microphone. We have been speaking with the Department of Health regarding that, and by way of review, in the event that a student or teacher tests positive for COVID, that particular student is quarantined, or the teacher is quarantined. They cannot come to school until such time as they are medically cleared. They need to be medically cleared by both their primary care physician and Rensselaer County. And they, in the case of students, depending on the duration of the period of time at which they are out of school, they would be provided either remote assignments and or instruction consistent with what we do currently in the event that a student is on a medical leave from school. It will be individualized based on the academic support that we provide for students. If they're homesick, would be individualized based on what we know about the potential for the student to be cleared of symptoms in consultation between our nurses, our administrators, and the family, and consultation with the family and their primary care physician.
All right. Here's another question. What happens to the learning if student tests positive or is waiting for the test results? Are they switched to remote learning? And I guess a part of that too is if they would just go to quarantine and be at home, how would that look for them?
They would not automatically be switched to remote learning because the remote learning program is being staffed for all of the students currently whose families have connected and asked us to provide the full remote option. Again, regarding the duration, it would depend on the duration of how long we anticipate the student being out. We do have tutoring in the district that is provided right now and coordinated by Mr. McHugh. So unless it were a long-term circumstance, we would probably access our tutors and provide the tutoring to make sure that we were helping the student keep up with their assignments.
Opportunities to interact directly with teacher and ask questions or seek help. I'm not sure if that's a question regarding hybrid or remote.
Okay, we're gonna interpret that question as applying to both. I'm gonna ask Mr. McHugh to talk about some of the ways that within the current hybrid, teachers are gonna be directly contacting students and also expand a little bit on that regarding virtual live instruction on Wednesdays and some of the concepts that our teachers are talking about in terms of office hours. Mr. McHugh.
So within the hybrid plan, obviously they have 2 full days of in-person instruction. So if they were fully remote, opportunities to directly interact with the teacher and ask questions. So two different scenarios. So within the hybrid plan on Wednesday, again, grades 6 through 12 follow that schedule, so they will be interacting. That is synchronous learning. In the K-5, the K-5 is trying to build a schedule that is developmentally appropriate for direct instruction, live instruction. We're also trying to secure the fact that for parents that may not be able to support their child during that time and that child needs that adult support, that there's access to that instruction. But our K-5 teachers are also looking at within that academic day if they can also incorporate office hours. So, parents or students would be able to contact faculty and staff. We are also trying to preserve our Learning Resource Center that we have at the high school and trying to make sure that whether a student is remote or in person, that they have access to that resource as well.
All right. Will there be a change in weekly schedule to accommodate for the many Monday holidays? Students on A will be impacted by days off more than the B students.
We talked about that issue within our administrative team. We have looked at other types of hybrid schedules. One of the concerns we have that under some options, we are concerned about the number of days that children would have to go between in-person learning and an opportunity to reconnect to their teachers. We're also trying to adjust the special schedule so that the special schedules aren't impacted. The Monday holidays is a factor. Mr. McHugh, if you want to add to what I'm saying, the combination of the in-person learning, the virtual live Wednesdays, the remote assignments work hand in hand, and as our teachers plan those experiences, they would take under consideration those students that would be impacted by the assignment of their group to more Mondays than the other group, and the nature of those assignments would be more long-term in duration and project-based. Jim?
Yeah, that's part of that need to really rethink the instructional plan. So, faculty look at those things. When's the next time that they'll be able to connect with those students, whether it's virtual or in person, and plan their lessons accordingly. So again, Mr. Simons emphasized the point that we're starting off slow with safety a priority, but this is something that we're going to continually reevaluate and be monitoring, looking for opportunities to increase that in-person time. But the lesson design really will be focused. Teachers know their instructional calendar and they will plan accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. McHugh.
All right, we're seeing a couple questions related just about the curriculum and the rigor for the remote option. Online experience must be much better than what was provided in the spring. And will we get the school curriculum for the remote option so we can make sure our child is successful?
We've talked about the curriculum that would be provided at all levels being the district's adopted curriculum based on the New York State learning standards. So at the high school level, that would be the course curriculum, generally preparing students for success on the Regents exams. At the middle school level, that would be preparing students for New York State required assessments. And at the elementary school level, it would be the curriculum aligned with the state learning standards for K through 5. That curriculum will not vary whether or not students are in full remote or in the hybrid model. It's the same curriculum and the same standards. The delivery methodologies might vary somewhat depending on the level. Additionally, the district has curriculum maps and unit topics identified for all grade levels, at least up into the kindergarten through 5th grade level and in all subject areas. Our plan in providing the information to our families is to make sure that the parents are aware of the topics within each subject area and some of the subunit concepts that are emphasized. So you'll be able to look at the outline of what the students will be required to learn. We have those tools available now electronically. We're in the process of customizing those so that they are more accessible to our parents.
How will the elementary children still be taking part in social activities such as the playground and recess?
This is a perfect question for Mr. Garib, our principal at Green Meadow Elementary School. Mr. Garib, can you talk a little bit about the social activities for the kids, including playground and recess?
Certainly, Mr. Simons. At the elementary level, recess and those social activities are really critical, especially after such an extended time out of school and interaction between the children. So our elementary children will still definitely get recess. We want them to. How we will accomplish that, we will limit the number of students on the actual playground equipment itself. We'll also be identifying areas outside of the school, different areas of the field, or possibly off to the side of the swing set, assigning areas for each classroom teacher to bring their particular students, trying to limit that interaction. Another piece, which really applies to multiple areas, is training. Not only training for our staff, but training for our students. how do our students engage in an appropriate manner to enjoy recess safely? What does social distancing look like on the playground? Those types of things. But we certainly value recess and those activities, and that's something the kids definitely miss.
All right, let's do one more question before we go to a new thought exchange. Other schools are doing a hybrid where the classroom is live streamed and the kids that are remote that day are able to watch the lesson. Can we do that?
We believe that the model that we are proposing to the community is a more effective model to deliver instruction. We also have limitations regarding our ability to do that, not necessarily to do it, but to do it well. And we believe the combination of what we're providing with a separate full remote option for our children will be give us the ability to provide more access to the same curriculum, opportunities for follow-up on the part of the teacher. So in many ways, what we're proposing will provide, as a full remote option, will provide more engagement than videoing a lesson and having kids watch it from home. Mr. McHugh, is there anything you want to add to that?
You covered it.
Thank you.
All right, let's move to a new thought exchange. I'll just take a moment. All right, how can we work together to make sure that all students and staff follow safety protocols at all times while riding the bus or driving to and from school and while attending school? So again, you're just going to go to tejoin.com and you'll type in this 9-digit code. And then you can begin putting in your thoughts, questions, or concerns. I'll drop this timer down since we are running low on time. Once you've asked a question or expressed a concern, then you can go in and rate other people's questions and concerns. All right. What will the line look like outside of school for temperature checks? So could we go into a little bit more on that process once students are coming off the bus or once they're dropped off? How will the temperature check process work?
Okay, I'm going to ask Ms. McGrath to describe what has been happening in our live in-person summer school. And then I'm going to ask our participants to think about the multiplication effect that has to occur because we only have about 155 students, I think, attending summer school, and we will be having approximately 2,000 students, K-12, coming in every day on their in-person learning day. So we're going to go to Ms. McGrath to describe what's happening now. Then we're going to go to Mr. Harkin to talk about his staging of the buses, and procedures at the high school. Then we'll go to Mrs. Barker on the middle school, and we will ask Mr. Elvey to talk about DPS.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Simons. So for our summer school special education extended school year program, we had about 175 students attend and about 150 ride the bus. So that required 21 buses that we were able to staff with a teaching assistant a teaching assistant or a bus aide in the morning to take the temperature check of the student before they boarded the bus. The maximum ridership on those buses were 10 students.
Okay, very good. Now, Mr. Harkin, we have high school kids, and everybody knows what the circle looks like typically. It's going to be very different this year. Can you describe where we're at this point with those morning procedures?
Yes, we plan to make use of 3 entrances. We're going to the main entrance, the west lobby where you would go to the auditorium, and the entrance to the left where they've been using for summer school of the main entrance. The buses are going to start arriving at 6:53 a.m. We plan to have the last bus out of the upper loop at 7:10, and then we're going to encourage parent drop-offs from 7:10 to 7:20. Again, using all 3 of those entrances. The sidewalks and the stairs will all be marked at 6 feet. So if you do come and there's a line, you'll stand 6 feet apart. We plan to have 15 staff members out front taking temperatures and checking students in. And we anticipate it's going to take about 30 to 35 minutes each morning. And we're looking forward to the challenge, but we think we can get everyone in safely.
Okay, the key differences there are the staggering of the buses, the entrance of students through 3 different entrances. It's very important that once we announce the times, we will communicate those in writing for parent drop-off. It's very important that parents help us by adhering to those times so that we can manage the busing students, their temperature checks, getting safely into the school, and then transition as we manage the students who are coming in who are being dropped off by their parents. Let's go to Mrs. Barker at the middle school.
Our plan is similar to the high school. We're going to have numerous staff members taking temperatures as buses arrive. As students come off the bus, we'll have staff members staged across our sidewalks where the buses come in. In addition to that, we also will have staff members who will be taking temperature of the kids who are dropped off before they're able to cross the crosswalk and come into the building. We have 3 different entrances. We have a 6th grade entrance, which will be our Red House wing, which is our 6th grade wing. Our 7th graders will go through the side entrance to our 7th grade wing, which is our greenhouse. And our 8th graders will come into the building through our main entrance. We, in addition to that, will have staff members manned at each doorway with each entrance, making sure that students are social distancing as they enter into the building and as they come into the building. We are also going to hopefully at some point have an opportunity to send some more information to 6th grade incoming 6th grade parents as to what it would look like specifically for their 6th graders.
Thank you, Mrs. Barker. Mr. Elvey?
Yeah, very similar to both approaches. Elementary is a little different, with incoming kindergarten students and their first experience at school. At DPS, where our bus loop is, we'll also have multiple entrances where our students will have their temperatures checked. We'll have a doorway for our primary, so our K1, our 2, 3, and our 4, 5. We'll also use our front entrance as we traditionally have done for our parent drop-offs. We'll have staff there to take temperatures as well. So we'll also, for our kindergarten students, our teachers are always there the first few weeks and will be there as long as they need to be to help support and greet our students. So our boys and girls all know, where they're heading once their temperature is taken. The other piece is we will also have a designated area too in case someone's temperature does exceed 100 degrees. That way we know we need to bring them directly to Mrs. Stacy, our school nurse. Those are our procedures currently at elementary.
Thank you, Mr. Elvey. Mr. Adam, I'm just going to ask the community to be patient with us. We do want to get through some additional questions. We did schedule this to be done at 8 o'clock. I'd like to extend it if possible, so that we can tackle a couple more questions here and move to the next thought exchange.
Sounds good.
And I appreciate our panel continuing to help us respond.
All right, we're getting some questions on masks. What type of masks will be acceptable? And then will students be sent home for refusal to wear a mask? What will the policy be there?
Okay. The typical student would wear a cloth face covering. Okay, so that that would be the general rule for most students. We would anticipate that some students, based on the advice of their child's primary care provider, that they may need to wear a different type of mask. In the event that that is required, we certainly would accommodate that. And we anticipate that there will be some students who are not medically able to wear masks, and we would need written authorization from a physician to permit the child not to wear any type of mask and or face covering. If a child refuses to wear a mask, the word refusal is critically important as we look at our code of conduct. There is a difference between a kindergartner who is itching their face, pulls the mask down for a short period of time, and then starts to play with it and requires a verbal reminder to put the mask back on. That's different from a high school student who says, I don't believe in masks, we're not going to wear masks, and you can't make me. In that case, that child will be disciplined within the code of conduct and sent home.
All right. Okay, if a teacher tests positive in the hybrid model, does the whole class have to quarantine?
Not necessarily. That could happen, and that will come at the direction of the Department of Health. And in the event that we would need to be prepared to do that, we would be able to shift that class to some type of remote instruction if that was for an extended period of time.
All right, this one I can actually answer. Create videos for students that models proper procedures for social distancing. Make videos available for students before the start of school. We are doing that. We'll be providing some resources to our staff and our families. That will include health and safety videos, courtesy of the CDC, things like how to wear a mask properly, how to wash your hands properly. And then we are also producing, as a district, specific videos on how the temperature check will work, our procedures for riding a bus, and procedures for being in the classroom. So those are being produced and they will be shared with our school community. Mr. Simons, do you want to do one more question in here?
Yes.
And then move on? Okay. Who will clean desks?
We are still discussing with our various bargaining units how that procedure and who will do that work. We have considerations regarding the CSEA unit that represents our custodial maintenance workers, our food service workers, as well as our other non-instructional groups, with the exception of teaching assistants and secretaries. And we also have ongoing discussions regarding procedures with the East Greenbush Teachers Association. We have not finalized those procedures yet. We're still having those discussions. We have identified sources for the material. We have ordered the material, including the proper authorized cleaning products and disinfecting products, as well as the appropriate PPE that would be required to do that. So we're still working on that, and once that is determined, we will let you know.
All right, as Mr. Simon said, we're going to do one more thought exchange. Again, go to tejoin.com and then type in this 9-digit code. And this thought exchange is, in what ways can we ensure effective communication with families from now until reopening during the initial weeks of the school year and throughout the year as we monitor the reopening and make adjustments as needed? So once you've signed on, you can begin to write your questions or concerns. Once you've submitted one or two of those, then you can start to rate the other thoughts and concerns of other people in the audience.
As we wait, I just want to let everyone know that currently we have approximately 296 individuals watching and participating in the meeting, and we had 131 participants in the last thought exchange. We really appreciate. I would say that in addition to responding to your questions this evening as much as time permits, this is very helpful to us because we can understand better what the concerns are. We will be updating our frequently asked questions document, which is available on our website. You can access that very easily within the yellow bar that at the top of the screen is all related to reopening. We have updated the frequently asked questions document since the last community meeting last week. So we understand that you are participating in this to get your questions answered. In addition to the direct answers that you might receive this evening, please check the FAQ document because the answer to your question, or in fact, even in some cases, the question as you have asked it is posted on the FAQ. And we will do that again as a result of all of the questions that we're receiving this evening.
All right, we've had a few questions about school supplies. When will those lists be sent out to families? And then will there be additional supplies needed, things like hand sanitizer? And will supplies be required with only 2 days on site?
Okay, I know because all of our administrators have been working on the review of options that might be available to the community. This topic is just coming up. It's coming up among our principals. I think in some cases there were initial supplies lists that were developed in the spring. Those have to be modified to comply with the requirements. I'm going to kick this one to Mr. Mahar, our principal at Belltop, to talk a little bit about the supplies lists. I know they haven't been developed yet and distributed. We've been focused on the procedures and the model for reopening. Mr. Mahar.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Simons. Teachers will be collaborating together on what their students should be using in their for their program, and once the class lists are sent out, information will be forthcoming with their newsletters. I would suggest, though, to families that general supplies and some type of a pencil pouch or a bag that they can be zipped in be purchased so that they can be using their own things at school and not sharing with others.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Are there any other comments on school supplies at any other level? I mean, we're going to have limitations because the students are not supposed to bring a lot of items and share a lot of items.
I just would add that several local businesses have really stepped up and reached out to us to ask us how they could support us. They understand that past practices of having some community resources is not an option for us this year. General Dynamics, which is right on 9 and 20, has done a school supply fundraising, event for us, and we're picking up those supplies on Monday and delivering them to a few of our elementary schools. So we hope that those initiatives help diminish the amount of additional supplies that families may need to purchase.
Mr. Simons, I will add in addition that all schools, I believe, have a small supply of additional school materials, and they're usually distributed out through our school counselor for those families in need.
So we would expect the list to be coming out sometime. We don't have a definite date of it. It may be within the next two and a half, 3 weeks. Right now, the conversations occurring between the principals, the teachers regarding further defining the structure so that's consistent across all districts for remote learning. Making sure that we can get the grouping assignments to you as soon as we can, which will be around August 24th now, because we've asked the remote instruction, full-time remote instruction families to confirm that information for us. We do recognize that these timelines are different than typical, but we're in a very different situation regarding reopening, and we are doing our best to make sure that routines such as school supplies lists and other types of items are we know that those are rituals that people look forward to doing back to school. We want it to be as normal of back to school as possible regarding those kinds of matters.
All right. We have a few on the topic of notifications. I would like real-time notifications if a classmate of my child or a teacher falls ill.
We talked about this with the County Department of Health. We certainly would notify families in the event that a child or a teacher became ill, but we're asked to follow the guidance and directives of the County Department of Health to coordinate that communication. We could have a range of issues occurring. We are not going to be able to meet the expectation that every time a child has a cough in a class, and I know that is an extreme example, that we would be able to communicate that. But in the event that somebody is sent home with COVID-19 like symptoms, the county would be made aware of that. The county would investigate that. We would encourage people to not necessarily go to the doctor's office, but to call the doctor's office so that they're not potentially exposing other people. Take their direction from their primary care provider, and then once that process occurs and we talk to the county, that will all be occurring within the same day. If we determine that the county, in consultation with the individual and the primary care provider, feels that it is warranted to take some actions as a school, we will notify the parents. And we will do that through all of the means that we currently do, our school messenger system, so that information is sent to you in a timely manner.
The next one says routine email, text notifications at least bi-weekly.
I think the bi-weekly suggestion is a good suggestion. We generally do a very good job of frequently updating our community. Mr. Adam handles all that work throughout the school closing process of last spring and throughout our planning of the summer. We have sent frequent notifications, and it could just be, please check our website. There's more information that's been provided there. It'll be district communication in combination with building level communication that will be coordinated in such a way that we don't overwhelm parents, but that we are able to provide updates on how things are going.
This one says, we need a better Q&A option that is more frequent. Questions are not being addressed/answered.
Every question that has been asked, for which we have clear, direct answers on right now, has been answered. And those questions have been either responded to within this meeting or the last meeting, or added to the frequently asked questions document. So I would ask you to look at the FAQ document first. I would remind you that we have indicated that more information regarding some of these matters, including the full remote learning plan, as well as the contact tracing plan and the testing plan, are all going to be up on our website as required tomorrow. So that may satisfy some of the concerns regarding the health questions and provide more information to the parents regarding full remote learning. I would say that there is also another opportunity on the 19th, on the 18th, for us to be able to come back to you and answer any questions that at this time we simply haven't have complete information. And there'll be another opportunity at the board meeting of the 19th during the public comment portion for us to continue to update the community. But that is why we have scheduled 4 separate opportunities for our parents and our community to engage with us. It is an evolving situation where we are continuing to make sure that we share information when we have it and when it is available.
And I would also add, if you do have a specific question, you can go to our website at egcsd.org, and along the top, there's a Contact Us tab. If you click that, you can submit an online form, and that will come to us, and we can send it to the appropriate person and get you a response. The next one is host forums that are targeted by grade level, more relevant information in a smaller setting. So would there be a possibility for different grade level forums or a remote forum versus a hybrid forum to segment these out in the future?
Yes, definitely. I think that's a good idea. And as we move into the fall, we will definitely set that up. I think that's a great suggestion.
All right. How many more questions would you like to answer, Mr. Simons?
We can take a few.
Okay. Will there be updates provided to parents and families on COVID exposure status? Will there be daily, weekly bulletins?
There will be updates regarding the COVID exposure issues. Again, that will be driven by whether or not we have any of those issues. And there'll be updates that are intended to make the community aware of what has happened and as well as how we're responding to it. But we also have to make sure that the way we communicate and what we communicate protects student and staff confidentiality, which is a federal requirement under the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act. So there's information we can share with you about the general concern that might be happening and the district's general response to it, but we would not be able to disclose information regarding a particular child and or a staff member because we would be in violation of the federal law.
Can we continue parent meetings like this one periodically throughout the school year?
Yes, the district has made an arrangement through Questar BOCES to utilize the tool that we're currently utilizing for the year. We worked through a cooperative agreement with other districts to purchase this tool at a lower cost than otherwise would be the cost if we went it alone. This in combination with other types of forums, we will utilize to make sure that this is an ongoing dialogue.
Please continue to support teachers. There's a lot of negative commentary from the community. This is new to teachers too, and they deserve support.
I really appreciate this comment because we have to understand that everybody is in this together. We not only have families and parents who are worried about the safety of their children, they are worried about when their children come to school, potentially being exposed and bringing back the virus to a family member, particularly a grandparent that might be residing in the home. Our teachers, our classroom teachers, yes, they are delivering education to the kids, but they have the same very concerns that any parent would have, any student would have, and any community member would have about the reopening to school. And additionally, our teachers are working with us to make this happen as positively as it can for the school community. So we do need to be careful and recognize that everyone, whether you're a classroom teacher, whether you're a family member, or whether you're an observer within the community, we all have the same fears. We all have the same worries. We're all doing our best to try to get through this situation, to open up our schools and to have it be as positive, optimistic, healthy, and educational for the children. And we have to remember that. And East Greenbush has always been a community where people work together. And we need to continue to do that and be careful not to disparage anyone as we engage in very difficult conversations about how to make this work.
All right. Would you like to do one more question, Mr. Simons, and then wrap it up?
Sure.
All right. Seen a few about these just in terms of communicating schedules and the AB days. When can families expect that?
The 24th of August, school will be starting on the 14th now due to the calendar change. The child care agencies are aware of our timelines. It would be a good idea to have an initial conversation with the child care provider prior to receiving your child's specific assignment so that you can monitor the availability of child care. Both the YMCA and Greenbush Child Care are aware of our timelines.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Simons.
So we have an opportunity for some concluding remarks. And I would ask if anyone on the panel has anything additional that they would like to bring forward to discuss, and then I'll wrap it up. Something we might have missed. One of the strategies that teachers are encouraged to use is wait time. When you ask a question and no one wants to raise their hand because they don't want to respond, you just pause and wait, and eventually somebody puts their hands up. Administrators are aware of that wait time strategy and therefore are very good at waiting. Mr. McHugh, anything to add? You're never at a loss for words.
No, I just, just want to thank our entire administrative group for really leaving no stone unturned. I mean, we've looked at every possibility. So I appreciate everyone's patience, and we're here to serve our students and do the best that we can at that.
Mr. Simons,
Please go ahead, Mr. Garib.
I'd just like to express my appreciation for the support of our parents and greater school community, and also a lot of the teachers and staff members that have been proactive, reaching out and offering their help and support. If any parents or community members or staff members have additional questions, I would encourage you to email, call, and we'll do the best we can to get back to you. But overall, the feedback has been very positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garib. Thank you, Mr. McHugh. So in closing, let me extend my appreciation as well to the panel of administrators who have joined us now for 3 occasions, going back to last spring. I want to thank Mr. Adam for the support he's provided for the thought exchange, and Mr. Goodwin, who has been a very busy man over the course of the last 7 months, I would say now, with the technology needs of our district and our families, for helping us put this together. For the families that are out there and following what we're doing regarding school reopening, I know that there are a range of issues. I know that there are a range of feelings. I know that there are a range of concerns and thoughts about school reopening. And we're trying to be as responsive to all of that range as much as we can. No district will be able to come up with a perfect reopening plan because there is no such thing. As you read not only what may be happening locally, but looking across the state, many districts are doing many different things. And it is a consideration regarding what they believe is in the best interest of their communities in terms of student safety and health and educational quality. In the case of East Greenbush, I, my administrative team, my staff, our board, including our support staff, and we're doing the best that we can and what we believe is in the best interest of the East Greenbush community. And that is our obligation to East Greenbush families and East Greenbush students. And so the hybrid plan that we put forward initially for the opening of school in September is what we feel gives us a level of confidence that we are fully prepared to keep the kids as safe as we can within constraints and to provide what educational quality we can within those very same considerations. So we're all working together to make sure that we can put forth the best plan possible for East Greenbush kids, for our families, and we would expect that you would not expect anything less than us from us. And so I thank you for your participation. We will continue to keep you informed. Feel free to engage in continued communication with the district through the different vehicles that Mr. Adam and others are providing. And we'll continue to have this dialogue as we prepare to welcome the children back in September. And thank you for participating.
Mr. Simons, can I add one thing?
Sure, Mr. Goodwin.
Some parents are asking whether or not they should purchase Chromebooks for their kindergartner through second grade. And I thought it might be a good idea for us to let them know that we've proceeded with that.
Yes, we have made a purchase that was approved by the board last evening, and we will be able to provide devices for the kindergarten and first graders, pending that they arrive. They may arrive a little bit late, close to the beginning of the year, but they are on order, and we will be providing them, thanks to our Board of Education and to Mr. Goodwin's good work. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.